Welcome back to part 2 of our tutorial on how to make a Dreams game from scratch. I've added in a few gadgets that I'm going to show you how they work, and I'm going to teach you about checkpoints and timelines, other things that are going to allow you to really have a complete level template that you can use to create new levels. Okay, let's take a look around. What new gadgets do we have? Starting with the checkpoint, this is the easiest one. A checkpoint is a place that saves your game. So if I go into gadgets, grab a checkpoint, it's under gameplay gear, and then I place it right here. You'll notice there's an arrow coming out of it. That arrow points to where you will respawn. So now, if I die after having entered this zone, I will respawn facing this way. Very useful if you don't want the player to have to repeat 20 minutes of gameplay, so good checkpoint usage can really make a game more fun. The next thing we really got to talk about is damage. How do you damage the player? Here we have a health modifier. The health modifier is a pretty simple tool to use. Here I have, you will lose, let's go all the way to 100. You'll lose 100 health when you hit this cube. It could either be on impact or through zone. I'm doing impact for this. You would do zone for the lava, where you'd have a giant rectangular zone. But here for the cube, I can just do impact. So now, if we go into play mode, when safety puppet touches the cube, now don't do this yourself because you're not wearing proper safety gear, but when safety puppet touches the cube, he should die. Yep. And it respawns. Now, this traffic cone over here, same thing. What I've done is I've taken a cone and I have attached a health modifier to it. So if you touch the cone, you get hurt. And then on the cannon itself is what's called an emitter. So you can see I've attached it right there. And you can see this arrow pointing out. What I've done is I've picked the cone, I selected that object, and every, let's do 1.5, 2 seconds, the cone is going to shoot towards you at 20 meters per second with a little bit of rotation, and I can face this cone shooter anywhere I want. I have it set to emit 7 max at once and recycle the used ones. This is very important here, so that you're not just leaving cones to take up memory. So now when I press R3, I'm getting a nice cone launch. You can see the health modifier on each individual one, and after 6 seconds it despawns, so they're not taking up a lot of memory. Excellent. Another hazard for our hero. So I'll press R3 to pause. Got my cone in midair there. The rotator. This is another easy to use tool that can really help create gameplay. So I went into movers and output. Instead of choosing a health modifier, this time I'm choosing rotator. And you can put this on more or less anything. So what if I put it on this cube itself? I hold L1 to press the surface, and I'm scaling up on the D-pad. And let's take a look at how strong this rotation is. I go into X, Y, and Z. We'll have it rotate. You can actually see the axes here, so Y. You've got your, I don't really want it going just straight overhead. Let's do X and a little Z just to get some fun off-kilterness. And at this speed, press R3 to test it out. You can see that's really fast. So why don't I slow this way down? L1 and square, and I can actually type in a value. Let's do 25 degrees a second instead of 150. And now it's a little more reasonable for platforming. Got my checkpoint. So this makes a really interesting dynamic here where you can flip and rotate things. I can even L1, R2 copy this cube with a rotator on it and place it in the environment. Rotate it around. And you just got some already active, fun stuff here. And that can be decorative. That doesn't have to be gameplay. This can be, I can take this and make it into a little mini sun for our character. You can really have fun with the tools. Here I can loosen flex perspective and it stops even being a cube. Give it some evaporate effect. See that? So I was able to take this rotating cube and just totally morph it. You can the tools in Dreams are incredible. So we talked about how to damage the character, how to save progress, how to rotate things. This is the big one now. This is what you have to have ready so that when we stamp this level, let's say your next level is a water level, you're going to have everything ready so we don't have to do this grunt work of the UI and the timeline and setting up the door in and out to the level like we did last time. We're going to just get it all done now, and when you copy it, you'll only have to change small details. So the timeline is where you keep almost everything related to time. It starts at 0, and for example, I can add in, oh man, there's so many different things. Let's start with a camera. This is a great way to start any level. And I click X on it, I go right here to adjust the camera. Why don't we have a shot that just sort of shows where we're headed, right? I'll put the end of the level right in the middle of the frame. Zoom out a little. Great. Now when I reset, I get a shot panned out, and then we pan in. Already looking a little nicer. I can add text, I can add lighting. For example, that's another great, let me show you that one. I go to sun and sky. What if I want, after, let's get away from this thing. So after 3 seconds, I want the sun and sky to change for a few. So I can go in. Maybe I want it to be, get rid of these flecks. Good opportunities, I need to teach you how to get rid of the flecks. Tint all the way through. I think horizon definition goes real low. Shade randomness real low. And now I just got a clear color. Let's go with a ever so slightly purple sky. Cool. And I'll lower the brightness. Ooh, that's nice. Timeline. Now when I rewind, camera pan, a couple seconds, sky change. And it will change back because I only set it for a couple seconds. And already you're getting some really professional looking effects. So the timeline, what else can we do? Music. Sound is another thing I would put on the timeline every time. Let's go right to the Dreamverse. Let's pick, I'm partial to piano and in hip-hop. Anytime we can mix the two. Let's just give some creator props here. Alright, so Brandon Behoy made some piano melodies, and it's very low thermo usage, which means memory. I'm going to grab that one, place it right here. You know what? I'm going to place it when the sky changes at 3 seconds. Now let's see how this looks. Reset, rewind, pan shot, and I zoom in, and I've got some music. Now, you'll notice the music stopped. If I expand the timeline out, that'll allow it to go longer. And the timeline itself can be used to create looping music. You could, for example, here, I open L1 square on the piano melody. I'm going to set just the piano melody to loop, so the whole timeline won't loop. You won't get the camera pan and the sky change every time it loops, but it will loop the music. And I love that new lighting, so I'm extending that out too. So now I'll select my character. And when I reset the timeline, it will play the music the whole time. And I'm off. And you've got rotation and you've got danger. We're already starting to feel like a game. Watch out for these cones. Uh-oh. Try to go right over it. My character has a jetpack. That's nice. What about you, Safety Puppet? Ooh, I don't know. Safety Puppet does not look very safe right now. But he had that checkpoint. See how useful that is? So with the help of the checkpoint, we stayed alive. Avoid this. Watch for flying cones. Now it is time to talk about, before we go to creating a second new level, because you have pretty much everything in here besides a UI. Let's talk about thermo usage. I'll pause the timeline. So, thermo is just a term that a lot of people use on dreams. And let me explain what that means. If you go into Show or Hide, and you click on Thermometer, up in the top left you have audio memory, graphics memory, and gameplay. We've been pretty efficient, and we've used very little of all three. Gameplay, I've only used 38% of the memory for this one scene. Each scene gets its own fresh memory, so you can link scenes and get as much space as you need. So, the secret is that if you take one asset and duplicate it, it's really easy on the CPU if you twist it and resize it. So if I take a cube, and let's go into, I'm pressing square, I'm going to go into sculpt mode. Let me put a cone on top. I press R1 and X to scope in. I'm just going to put a couple cones on top of this cube to make it different than everything else you guys are looking at. And on this side, let me change the shape to this. This is going to be very quick. This is what's referred to as a Greeble Cube. In Star Wars, on the Death Star, there's all these little details, if you look closely. It was actually a very small model, and they used all these tiny details to create the impression of scale. If you press triangle, you can have negative space shapes. On this side, I'll invert it. Now I'm going to do, just kind of have free draw here. Okay. Now, it doesn't really matter how much you have going on as long as you have just one sculpt. You can really get away with a lot more. So you see I'm doing a lot of weird stuff with shapes and negative space and stuff jutting out. And let's make this cube metallic. So I really encourage you to make your own Greeble Cube. In my new game, I've gotten away with making huge levels by essentially rotating and reshaping the same cube. So I take this, L1 and R2, and if you watch the thermo, very little happens. I can press triangle to snap to the grid. If I press square, guides, and then grid snap. This is great, that gives you a grid to work on. And then also, you can click always stay upright. But for me, I want to rotate. So if I take, let's go, this side goes like this, and maybe I go really tiny, and rotate. Let's get rid of this for a minute. And as you can see, I'm starting to get some really interesting shapes. And if you rotate and snap and move enough, it becomes pretty much unrecognizable to the untrained eye. You see how we can just link things up. And you are well on your way. You have 2 levels in the bag. Great job. See you in episode 3.